Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Westworld Season 3, Episode 5. It's called Genre. So full spoilers for the episode, as always, and we're already over halfway. This is too quick. It feels too quick.
Yeah, and also it's kind of making the pacing of the season feel a little weird that this is over halfway now.
Yeah, I guess in a way. I mean, this felt like it belonged in the second half, if that's what it...
No, it did, but it made me feel like there was stuff missing beforehand.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Like I feel like we jumped ahead. That this is the start of a second half episode. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like I'm missing. We only just got out the intro almost.
Sure. Okay. I see what you said. Yeah, that's one sort of, there was all about Bernard, but, there was no Maeve, and Bernard only kind of came into it once he just happened to be involved in the other plot, because it was very much Serac, the backstory of Rehoboam, and obviously Dolores' plan, and even those sort of connect heavily once they kind of get going, because they'll ultimately converge kind of in the same idea. So, big concept episode. This started with Serac speaking French and talking about Rehoboam and like his creation, and ultimately it became clear it was speaking to it. When he started saying "you," it was like no, he's talking to the machine, the godlike entity.
Mild Mr. Robot vibes at the start of that, though.
Yeah. So he's talking to Rehoboam, and he's talking about how it came into creation. And how after Paris was nuked, him and his brother left, went elsewhere, and the world was in a bad place. We get this montage of the society crumbling, riots here, harsh climate changes there, just all over the place.
Some wonderful use of stock footage from the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's funny because it kind of gives you a sense of a date. I mean, I'm sure they have dated this anyway, but
I think it's like 2050s-ish.
Yeah, we'll give it his age. That would actually
kind of line up.
Yeah, more or less. So, and they designed this. They wanted to build a god. Basically, there was no god. There never was a god, but they're going to build one. So there's a direction for humanity, so that society can actually have an ending. We can actually plan. We don't have to play it by ear anymore. We don't have to improvise. We can actually have a plan. And they get Liam Sr., Liam's dad, the owner of his company, to sort of fund it. They build this thing, multiple versions, because they go through a few names. They mention a few other names, one of the flashbacks.
They do, yeah.
And I can't remember what they were, but one of them at least made me chuckle, because it was very much a sci-fi nod to something else. So I'd have to go back and check what it was.
I remember them all being things that, like, names that were much more normal sounding than Rehoboam. Don't get me wrong. But not memorable enough that just hearing it once, they've stuck with me.
Yeah, nah. I want to say one was Hal, but I could be wrong. It was something like that. There was something made me chuckle because it was sci-fi. Yeah. But we get this backstory, but we get this ultimate idea that there's certain people you can't predict, right? So the machine starts predicting things. There's a great scene in the middle of the episode where Liam Sr. didn't like any of this. He was about to shut everything down, but they actually say, hey, look, we've got it working for the future, right? Because they had it predicting the past pretty accurately, which he's like, of course, like, what's the point of that? Why do we need the past? Also, it's weird to even talk about this because devs is a thing right now.
See, I've seen so many people talking about the comparisons and saying which one they think is so much better than the other on Twitter over the last day or so, and it's a wild conversation.
I mean, one is better than the other.
I agree with that. But there is a very definitive stance that people have, like one way or the other, and it is not a universal opinion by any means.
The sad part is that I want it to be a fight. I want it to be something that is that I can wrestle with in my mind, but unfortunately, one of these things has been very disappointing. Maybe not for the science fiction side of it, but devs has been underwhelming, and this is a better show.
It was getting it had so much potential and promise till a point where it was like, okay, maybe not.
I'll put it this way: devs has Lily as the lead character. This has Dolores. End of discussion. There is nothing to debate.
Pretty much, yeah.
We're done. Yeah. we're done. But also, I think that I actually think the science is better on this as well. And I won't talk about devs because I don't want to get into, especially because if no one's been watching that, then it's spoilers and whatnot.
Yeah. But in what way in this show?
And they openly acknowledge, Serac actually explains to Liam Sr. in a later scene that, and even some of the people, it becomes this apparent thing where, because so the scene we were describing before was the stock market, right? And it's like, hey, we stole $5 million and we turned it into 100 million. You're welcome.
Like, and they did that in like a week or whatever it was.
Yeah. But so later we find out that there are outliers. There's people that it can't predict, and there's decisions that it can't predict. The big one that comes sort of at the end of the flashbacks is when Liam sees what he's doing and that he's keeping all these people, including his own brother, the brother that helped him build it, right? Who was the older brother, the one who was kind of almost spearheading it in the first place, became this exception because he can sort of, he's kind of going crazy because he's not really, it doesn't fit into the world like everyone else does. He's kind of different. And obviously that this extends to kind of the core themes of a lot of the show, the idea of the host being a bit different, whatever Caleb is, we'll get to him later, but like being different, the idea of outliers not fitting in. And obviously I think your mind then goes to like, well, you're keeping them all separate, and okay, you're technically working on them to change them, which makes me think of, I don't know, Reavers, or the thing that made Reavers, perhaps. It also makes me think a little bit of, I don't know, the Holocaust. You know, there's several things that it makes me think of.
I think this for me, it felt more like sexuality conversion camps.
Oh, in terms of the actual visual, what they're doing, sure.
The visual and the purpose, in the sense that fixing them, they're not just trying to kill them here. There is an aim here where they want to correct them so they can put them back into society, theoretically.
Yeah, no, I get that comparison. I think I jumped to the Serenity thing, which I'm not going to get too specific with that because I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But because that was purely about fixing people so the world would run smoother, and this is kind of the same thing. He wants it to work like a perfect machine, and unfortunately people are just too unpredictable. People think differently. People who have different types of mind don't fit into that.
I definitely don't disagree with the Serenity one. I think I was more just comparing against the Holocaust analogy. I think I'd go more with the gay conversion.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like a lot of science fiction, it comes down to, because it's interesting that he even openly admits that they created a god, right? Because this is the idea. Because often in sci-fi, you get the mad scientist who's trying to play God, right? And in a way, he's kind of doing that. And like a lot of these characters, has in his own mind noble intentions, where the whole point is to make society work and humanity to thrive and not completely buckle every couple of generations because tensions rise or these other problems come up, whatever it may be, whether it's political, whether it's whatever. And he wants to fix all that, but he's doing that via control. And if there is no control, then what's the point of life? And there's some good analogies that come from other characters actually in other plots later as to why that's not necessarily a great idea. But he's even doing this to his own brother, and that's maybe where the conversion therapy example really comes in, the idea that someone's doing this to their own relative as opposed to just everyone else. But no, when he takes him out, right, and he ultimately kills him. He takes him out. He's like, "This is your private jet. This wreckage, this smoke that we saw in the distance, is this your private jet? I'm sorry you didn't make it." And he kills him. But before they get to that point, there's a really interesting part of this conversation, which for me, going back to why I said I like this, the sci-fi side of this more than Devs, is it says, no, there's some stuff that it just can't predict. Like we can look at this moment multiple times and we'll get different results, because sometimes you'll live and you'll make the right choice not to like betray what I'm trying to do, and sometimes I'll do this. And I like that element of it, the idea that isn't completely foolproof. It's not 100% thing. It's probabilities, right? It's within reasonable expectations.
It is, and that's kind of how it's been set up to work the whole time. In that, okay, if this person, there's an 80% chance that they'll end up just being a terrible human being, then we'll just kind of we won't even bother trying, because that 20% isn't worth the risk. Not worth the wasted resources.
And that's why we shouldn't know, because people should have that chance to defeat the odds, right? It's Gattaca. Yeah. That's the time part of Gattaca. We've been
saying this all season, and
obviously,
it's definitely Gattaca.
Gattaca is just purely about health, right? Whereas this is expanded beyond even that. It's just into everything. But it's the same basic idea. It's like, we'll just dismiss you because you're not worth the low percentage chance that you're going to be useful in 20 years.
I really want to watch Gattaca again now.
Gattaca's a great movie.
It's so good.
But this is going even a step further, because it has this extra layer on top of it, because we have these two previous seasons of these other like artificial intelligences that have escaped their own loop. Because at one point Bernard even says, he looks up and says she's breaking them out of their loop. You know, because I mean I was already thinking that, but he really, you know, he made point. It makes just so everyone would get it. She's doing. Are you going to complain? You think it's too on the nose?
A little, just a touch, just a smidge. You know, with the actual line of it when it's been very clear.
I mean, I don't know. Everything was ramping up. All the plots were coalescing. The music was going nuts. I think at this point it was the cover of was it the Iggy Pop song at this point? I may have been. There was a lot of music in this episode. The goddamn Shining music started playing at one point.
Joel, also because it's on that's on the beach. You know, that's the pier that we were on a few episodes ago. And that pier is the one that was in La La Land. So I'm like, okay. So now in my head, that is, you know, it's City of Stars from that movie. And then now I've got the Shining music going on at the same time. When I see this, I'm like, what's going on?
So there was that. There was some covers as well, some of which were tied into what Caleb was going through, which is interesting stuff.
It was fun.
So no, it's funny because last week my one complaint about last week's episode, which was a great episode, was that Serac was less interesting to me because he was just like evil and wanted to just kill the dude anyway. And obviously this episode naturally did a lot to make it more interesting, in different ways. He's still just that villainous, because at the end, you know, he still kills the guy. He has these noble goals, but I'm almost seeing a hypocrisy in his actions as to what he's actually trying to achieve in it. And obviously, I guess he's going to justify it. If I could argue this with him, he'd be like, well, the ends justify the means. This is all for a purpose.
Something I'd really like to know is, does he play by his own predictions for himself? Because obviously he knows about his own outcome. Does he intentionally go, okay, I like this outcome, I'll play along, or does he go kind of intentionally try and defy it and kind of make his own way to put himself above the god that he created?
That's going to be a weird statement, but I think that he's inherently more likable and less slimy when he's speaking in French. For some reason, when he's
slimy.
So, what?
You think he's less slimy speaking in French?
Yes. When he's speaking in English, he sounds like a villain. Like everything he says, everything sounds like he's conniving and he's working against you. When he's speaking in French, it feels more honest. It feels like the comparison that oddly I was getting, especially at the start when he was talking over the nuclear bomb going off and he was describing the stuff, because that's when he was mainly speaking in French. It was reminding me of the short film that inspired 12 Monkeys, The Pier. Legitime is the original title, because that's entirely in narration in French and it's just still images, and it's about like a nuclear a holocaust or a nuclear post-apocalyptic world. And I was getting like flashbacks of that as he was talking about the world being in a place, and like, I don't know, it felt more genuine.
I hadn't considered that. I was actually talking about that movie with someone else the other day for a different reason. It's kind of weird that it didn't pop into my head here, but now that you mention it, yeah, I can see where you're getting it. Yeah,
I don't know. I guess his real or his real language, his original language, is his native language is just, I don't know. He sounds less villainous. Like it doesn't sound like he's faking it in a weird way. I don't know. I don't think that's about anyone who speaks a second language. It's just him. He sounds like a slimy villain every word he says in English.
I wonder if part of that is you not understanding the French to listen to. So when you're hearing it, it's not having the same undercurrent because you're reading the subtitles with the intention that it's there. And you're not hearing the same undercurrent that's in his voice when you're just listening to him.
I mean, there'll be an element of that, but like you can still get intent and tone from languages even when you don't understand what they're actually saying.
No, that's true.
You know, it doesn't feel, the way he was talking to Rehoboam was not the way he was talking to Maeve, or the way he's talking this episode to the other characters, where he always feels like he's playing a game of poker and he's always got the upper hand. He's always shielding, what he's playing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. He felt a bit more honest.
Yeah. Because he's God. He's built his God and he's talking to his God. His God and also his child, technically. So there's a weird double thing going on there. I was also saying at the start, actually, this was kind of, maybe this will become more relevant until our plots later, but at least in the context of this episode, where he sort of gets the leader of Brazil, I think it was, to back down.
Yeah, I thought it was Brazil as well. Then I was like,
there was a Brazilian flag behind him anyway.
Yeah. He basically was like, hey, I rigged this election so that you could get in. And now my prediction algorithms say there's going to be an uprising in 10 to 12 years or whatever it was over in this part of the country, and you'll be screwed. So you're going to want to head that off now. And he thinks he's threatening him, and he's like, well, I can just move it up to like 6 weeks and just have a new president and deal with him instead.
Yeah. Well, he also makes it clear that the reason why that uprising is going to happen is because of what he's doing. This shady business deal that he's got to keep some of these supplies by for his friends. That's what's going to create the unrest. That's what's going to slowly bubble over because of the greed, and then that'll lead to the uprising. So, yeah.
It's interesting this because you could read it in two ways. Like, one, he's just extorting money out of all of this situation, right? Because he's clearly, obviously, we know he's ridiculously wealthy anyway, and he's been paid off by this guy, and and there's an ongoing deal here anyway. That's clearly implied in the scene. But also, is part of it just him genuinely not wanting to have this rebellion in this country, this maybe some level of civil war happen? Because that does seem to be his goal, is to kind of create some sort of peace. And I don't know how genuine that is, as opposed to him just being a shady individual.
It's tough. Because I don't think he cares about money that much. I think he obviously, it's a means to an end, so he needs it to some extent. I don't think he actually cares about being the wealthiest in the world. I don't think he actually gives that much of a shit about it. He uses it. It's just something that he needs, but I feel like he is an idealist. Because the real debate comes down to not so much like, yes, he wants to not have any revolutions. He wants to not have any violence, but he kind of represents almost the 1% side of things, where he wants everything to stay calm, not so much even for his own self-interest per se. It's almost like he's flipped it in a weird way, where keeping things calm stops the violence, and that serves the interests of everyone, but it doesn't actually give people the freedom
because I was thinking it's quite interesting how his way here of keeping the peace is just quash this uprising right now, just stop it immediately, put them down, but maybe don't let them have that freedom.
But maybe in this era of Brazil in the future, maybe exactly what the people need, what that country needs in this era, is an uprising, because it needs to change the balance of power.
No, I think it's interesting that the idea of this uprising is essentially against a corrupt government, and he's like, look, we both know you're corrupt, but let's just deal with it now, and then you can carry on being corrupt, and they can carry on. Yeah,
he seems quite happy to leaving the rich and powerful be rich and powerful. He's not going out of his way to correcting that injustice.
No, he wants quote unquote peace in terms of no violence, it seems, but he's quite happy to keep the economic status quo.
Yeah. So he's an idealist, but at the same time, he's not actually trying to save everyone who needs saving or anything. There's nothing really fair about it.
No, he's trying to just keep things exactly the way they are, right?
Yeah, it was heavily implied that he kind of the machine and him and his brother kind of created the relative peace they have right now. Things were rough when they were kids. They've kind of had everything fall into place over their time with the machine into the last, 10, 20 years, whatever it's been, of relative peace. And that's the way it is. But, there's some really fascinating stuff in here. And that's just one side of the episode, because then obviously we have the Dolores side with Caleb, and so they've got Liam. They're on the run. Liam's trying to weasel his way out of it. He drugs Caleb with the genre drug. Which
it's after he looks in with the glasses to see his prediction, his profile, and gets terrified of him, basically.
Yeah. Which notably is after he tries it on Dolores and is confused as to why she's just not in the system. There's no existence of her. And obviously we know why. Yeah. But yes, so he gets terrified. He drugs him with this thing, which ends up leading to just a really fun mechanic for the episode to play with as we get a series of action sequences. Not the whole sequences play out in this, but every so often we'll cut back to Caleb's perspective when we're kind of focusing on him, and we'll be in whatever genre in his head. The first one is a sort of black and white noir kind of style. Then the second one, the music kind of picks up, and the second one's more music orientated than it is visually. There was a little bit of scratches and stuff when it first transitioned, but it didn't really stay there throughout. And then, of course, there was the romantic one that came after. There was the Rise of the Valkyries came on, I think, for the third one.
No, I think that was the second one.
Was that the second one?
Yeah, because that's when he has the rocket launcher thing in the car.
I mean, they are or whatever, but the point being is that it's cycling through all these things. But as this is all happening, though, they're on the run. Men are after them, and the plots are starting to intersect because we see Serac finds out that, hey, all this stuff's happening. And Liam's money has been used to try and outbid Serac for Delos, so it's kind of going after him in that sense as well. So he's sending everyone they've got after them, and Liam thinks his men are coming to save him. And so no, that's not your men. So they just basically steal a rideshare cab, a self-driving cab, and
hack into it.
They have to hack into it, and she has to convince Liam to sort of give up his scan to let her take control of it, because it's just shutting down. It's like, oh, there's an Amber Alert on this vehicle, pulling over. It's just obviously trained to obey the law, and we get a chase, and we get Caleb kind of tripping out, going in and out of like focus, and he's got this weird grenade launcher, and there's the grenade has a camera on it, and it can be driven.
I thought it was a grenade launcher at first as well, but it seems to be a small rocket in the end where because it fires out and then it becomes like a little drone that Dolores is controlling from her screen. Well,
that's the point, is that it looks like a grenade launcher at first, and then it's just, no, we're in the future. Their tech is a bit fancier, so
way cooler, yeah. Because this is the bit where this chase starts in the black and white sections for him, and he's completely out of it. And that's when he's sticking his head up out of the roof. That's when we've got red Valkyries going on, and it's all a bit more.
But then it turns to the love story theme stuff where they make a sort of standoff, and they're both standing there shooting, and he's just kind of like in awe of Dolores for like a minute. And I was expecting her to turn and look at him in slow motion, which she kind of did at one point, but no, it wasn't quite what in my head what I thought was going to happen.
It wasn't quite slow motion, but she definitely gave him a look of like, come on, what are you doing?
But I just kind of snapped into action, into his training, and just sort of went for it. And then the others, the other people who use the criminal app show up. So yeah, and they kind of held about. So this is all good. I mean, ultimately, this sequence is all action, and there's a lot of shouting and stuff. I will say, if I have a complaint about anything in this season of Westworld, bizarrely, it's a technical one, is that sometimes I think the sound mix is a little bit heavy on the dialogue.
That is fascinating, because I was going to complain about the opposite in this episode. I was going to complain about the sound mix and say that the dialogue was too quiet at points.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you meant it was too soft.
No, heavy on it as in I couldn't hear the dialogue, and I've kind of felt that a little bit all season, to be honest. But this scene when they're in the car and she's like saying stop to the car, I can get what she was saying, but I'm like, if I couldn't predict what you were saying right now, I'd have no idea what she just said.
I felt the same. I think, honestly, I've been okay for most of the season, and even a lot of this episode I was okay. The only times I really felt it was when it was music related to the genre drug. Like when that was playing, even early on when we actually hear them say, oh, it was called genre and this is what it does, I had to really pay attention to what it was saying. Like I realized that I didn't really hear that, and I had to really think about what they'd said to register it in my brain. It kind of, because it was so muffled.
Yeah, I wouldn't even define it as the dialogue's too low. I'd say the music's too loud.
I would over those sequences, yeah.
But that's just really just based on it being at the same level I have everything, but the music's kind of overpowering and the sound effects are overpowering. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it's there. So
yeah, like I say, I've not felt any other episodes, only this one. But,
no, it's been every time to the point where when I'm sitting down to watch Westworld now, I'm just turning the subtitles on when I start, because I know from previous weeks that I've been having trouble hearing some things, especially when they whip out things like Rehoboam and stuff like that, and I'm like, no, I need
which I'm pretty sure you're still saying wrong.
I don't care. I don't care.
You're past caring at this point.
I'm past caring. It's Rehoboam. Rehoboam. Rehoboam.
It's like it's 4 syllables, I think. Rehoboam.
Rehoboam. 4 syllables is awkward. Why did? No one likes words that have more than 3 syllables in them. This is awful, right?
That's such a strange blanket statement to throw out there.
Could you name me a good word with 4 or more syllables?
Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think of any words with 4 syllables, but I'm sure there are some good ones. I'll get back to you on this.
Sure. Yeah.
Catastrophe.
Yeah, that's got flow to it though. That's got.
Yeah, but still, Point stands. 4 syllables. Good word.
Okay, 4 syllables in a word, you have to treat it like a song. You have to have flow and rhythm to it. It has to sort of naturally go up and down. Peaks and valleys, right?
Rehoboam. I think it does.
Nah, it says there's 2 H noises. There's not 2 H's in it, but it sounds like there's 2 H noises, right? It makes it awkward. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's an awful word. Writers, I want a new cut of this. I want a recut with dubbed over every single time they say Rehoboam. I want it changed to something else that's more pleasant on my ears.
Pick one of the names that they use at the start of this episode instead, is what you're really saying.
Yeah. So, anyway, so they go off to the subway or the train or whatever, and they go in, and he's in like a rave mode now, where he's seen.
I really like this light because it was kind of subtle in the sense that it was soft lighting still. It wasn't like harsh, like club lighting.
No, it was making all the lights pulsate a little bit, like the strips of light in the train were just kind of pulsing a little bit as if they were going a long time with music.
It was nice.
But so this is where some stuff gets really interesting, because this is where Dolores, Liam was trying to like wriggle his way out of everything and, you know, say that there's no point in this and blah blah, and of course at one point he says, well, you can't access it unless you're there at the device itself, and you can't be in 2 places at once. And I'm just like, just you watch.
Oh really now?
Just cuts to Connells, Dolores, just starting around with Bernard, but you know, and basically he starts looking, you know, they make Liam look at some of them with the glasses to say what they're going to be, and he sort of, you know, the 2 criminal characters whose names I can't remember. Lena Waithe is
one of them's Giggles.
Lena Waithe is Ash. She's Ash, and she, like, you know, she does everything she does to raise money for her brother who's younger to put him through school, and he says something like, you know, if you knew where he was going to end up, you'd realize it's better than where you are. Like, you know, he's very ominous, and kind of like, and you know, they're arguing. You know, Caleb's arguing, no, people should know what their future is or what their chances are, and they shouldn't have this deck stacked against them. And he's kind of arguing that, nah, there'll be chaos, there'll be murder. You can't let everyone know, you know, because that's what Dolores' plan is. She's going to send everyone their file, essentially, like what their prediction is for them, and, you know, to see what happens. And he's like, yeah, you can't do that. It's going to be murder and chaos. And that's when she's like, oh, you would know about murder. And he kind of tries to apologize for having her killed. But, you know, and Caleb has this analogy where he talks about when he was overseas, and he says that they had a rat problem and they had to build their own trap. So what they would do is they'd have some bait at the end of like a plank of wood, and there'd be a bucket of water under the end of this, and, you know, the rats would go up to get the bait and they'd fall over into the water and drown. But sometimes, if they filled the water up too much, there'd be enough hope for the rat to get out of the bucket, because they'd be close enough to the edge that they'd keep trying. But it never actually happened. They would just struggle for longer before they died, because they had hope. So, and obviously comparing that to what they're doing with people is easy. The idea that they're presented, most people at least are presented with the illusion that they can maybe make something of themselves, that they can rise up in the social ranks, whatever it may be, but the system's already decided that that's impossible for them, but only making their you know, ultimate demise, whatever they've predicted, more likely, because, you know, which is something we talked about in a previous episode, is the idea that, you know, him not getting the new job is just more likely to drive him to the suicide that it thinks it's going to make him do. So
it's self-fulfilling the whole time.
So, and I love this sequence of scenes here. The everyone getting their thing in the phone, and everyone reacting to it, and the sort of the somber music playing as it looks around at everyone, and
it was powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah, really good stuff. And, you know, Liam's like, oh, you've just ruined everyone's life in this train station. And he's like, not just a train station, entire planet. And, you know, they walk out, and like people are just reacting that way. And eventually, like, Caleb's drug wears off, and he's like, oh, what genre am I on now? And he's like, you know, and the guy's like, oh, this is just reality. This is your life now.
That was a great payoff to a beat earlier where I think it was Giggles said to him, like, oh, hey, you know, he recognized he was on genre immediately. He's like, hey, you know, look out for the last act,
which I like, because that's the last act. Then, because given that he's now in reality, the last act then was when he thought of the memory of the rats, right? And that happened because the last act, he looks over and he sees what it's like a soldier essentially from behind sitting in a chair. So it's more personal. The last act was more of a personal thing, which was interesting.
Exactly. And I thought that was such a line that was really ominous. That was like, oh god, what is it? And it kind of it had me on edge as soon as I heard that.
Yeah, I mean the whole genre thing. It was really playful. It reminded me of the sort of thing that Community would do sometimes, or like
a bit gimmicky and just kind of there to have some fun almost.
Well, no, I think it works in the context of what's going on here, but I like it, or even something that Mr. Robot would do. Actually, Mr. Robot would have episodes. This is the episode that's in this, or the episode that's doing this thing, the one shot episode or whatever. And I felt like this was kind of Westworld playing around in that sandbox a little bit, and it made I think the car chase with the self-driving cars and all that stuff would have been fun anyway, but I think it added this extra layer to it that just made it feel a bit more stylized, and not just in one style either, because it started off in black and white and then it switched again at the end, and it kept things popping in a way that made it feel really energizing. And I think this is probably my favorite episode of the season so far, and it's kind of
I think I preferred last week's.
I prefer this one, and I think it's because the backstory to the device I found really interesting. One of the things I love as well, actually, every time it goes to the visual of the globe, the white, the black on the white thing. Yeah. Every time it does that, I love the descending sound and the music that it plays. It's like
it's nice.
Yeah. I like that a lot, but this idea of them all walking out and everyone just kind of being gobsmacked at what their world is, because we actually get to see a few of them. If you're paying close enough attention, you can read a few of what the various passengers in the train are.
One of them was like early onset Alzheimer's. Yeah,
that one stuck out. The other one is like a mother who clearly, because her daughter's too young, she got her daughters, and it says she commits suicide via wrist injury within like 5 years, and she's like 11 years old. So this is like a teenage suicide, and she's looking over at her daughter and holding her wrist.
And there was one where the couple were like swapping phones with each other.
Yeah.
So hey, let's see how bad this is for each other.
Yeah. And one of them was too scared to, which is really, so and obviously this is not stuff that we should know, right? This is the thing. It's like, I actually agree with the sentiment that people shouldn't know all this about themselves. The problem is that if someone else does, then we should.
Yeah, it's the problem where you shouldn't know, but also there shouldn't be something reinforcing it either.
Yeah. So, and because of something reinforcing it, there's this godlike thing that's put them on the train tracks. That's what Connells Dolores called it. It says they're all riding the train and we're about to show them the tracks. Yeah.
That did really not help with the devs comparison.
Yeah, but at the same time, of course, again, goes back to the park, goes back to the hosts. Everything just all comes together. This is them seeing the code. See when Dolores and Maeve woke up for the first or whatever time, sort of semi self-aware, and they looked at their own code and they were like, "This is a script." Like this is that for the humans.
It's why this actually makes so much sense for Dolores. It makes her seem less evil right now as well. Like,
I agree. I agree.
Because she's saying, no, they need to see this. I'm setting them free. And this isn't some cynical thing. This isn't some villainous plan. This is her genuinely not, no, this is what I did for me. And I feel so much, better for myself now. I feel like me.
It makes us second guess like any ideas we had of like Bernard believing she needs to be stopped. Like, is he right to want to stop her now? And because part of like her realization at the end of season 2, which is to let some of the hosts go off into their fake heaven because that's what they wanted and it was their choice. Her accepting that was kind of a face turn in terms of like her just being a dictator, before that point. And maybe she has kind of kept that going, and obviously there's teases here with Caleb that like maybe imply that she doesn't just see him as someone who can help her, rather than she knows his past, which is obviously something they're really teasing this episode. And Liam flat out says you don't know who you are, and I think our like sort of theorizing back when we first met him that maybe he's like some kind of host. I almost think that was too narrow-minded. Like that's just the same thing again. It's not that simple.
I don't think it is, and also he wouldn't be in the system surely as a host.
Exactly. Yeah. It seems like it's funny because we made some comparison to Homecoming before, I remember, but it almost feels like he maybe he either willingly or unwillingly went through a memory loss process or like a personality change process to forget the awful things that he'd done. Because the implication in the quick flashes we get is that he tortured people at the very least, if not more than that. And
I'm wondering if he went through Serac's kind of program, for the broken people, and maybe he was spat back out.
That makes sense. And there's even a line in there that kind of implied that, because I don't think we ever had any inclination that the him almost dying, the bullet to the face that he said he had before. I think this is the first episode that implied that it was self-inflicted. I don't think that had ever been brought up before.
No, it hadn't. We'd always just assumed, we knew he was military, and he'd seen combat, so we just assumed he took a gunshot at some point. So I think that's a reasonable assumption.
And if the idea is here is that he was so ashamed of what he was doing, he was, it was something that was eating away his humanity, that he had to try and end it. But then he was brought back almost like a host after death. The comparisons to the host again kind of keep.
Yeah, I am 99% sure he's not a host in any way. Yeah. I think it is just, look how humans are like hosts.
Yeah, and I think this episode clearly showing that there's humans that are different and outside what the device and what Serac see as valuable. Clearly lines up with the idea that, okay, that makes sense, that they're showing us that humans can be different, and that's what he is, because that's the end of the episode, is when he says to her, I'm not like other people, and she's like, neither am I. It's like, and I think you could almost read that the other way and say, oh, that's almost implying that they're both hosts, they're both artificial, but I don't think it is. I think that's an acceptance from her almost, that yeah, you are different and I'm different too, we're both different, we're not the same as each other. But we're both different. I think
it's kind of saying like Caleb falls in, and maybe a lot of the other people in the facility that Serac has. I'm just going to refer to it as that for now. They're kind of the equivalent of what Maeve and Dolores and Bernard were in the host park.
Yeah, but unlike the park though, where they didn't expect the host to gain anything past a certain point, they're prepared for humans to rebel, so it's so tight that they can't evolve past their current point.
Right.
Yeah. They don't have the chance to grow. I mean, it wasn't even that Dolores and Maeve were allowed to. It was more of a sneaky thing. It slipped past the cracks, but the humans don't even have that chance because they're expecting the humans to try things. So they've got them in cages, they've got them in cells.
Right. Honestly, I think all these comparisons are fascinating. One of my favorite moments actually is when some gunshots, some guys get out of the car and they start shooting at the crew, and it's coming at Caleb, but Dolores steps in front of it, and it goes through her.
Very good guy, Terminator.
yeah, it goes through her, and Caleb looks at the bullet hole at the back of the jacket and was like, "Okay, that's not normal." And she's just like, she basically just winks and zips up her jacket. It's like, don't tell anyone. I kind of love that.
She didn't wink. I'm positive she did not wink.
No, she didn't. That's what I said. Basically, that was like the look she gave him.
I think I would remember a smirk in her face. You're like, don't tell us, shush now, shush.
That's what I think. Like I said, basically just winked. Not that she actually did that, but that was like the vibe that she was giving off.
I kind of love the idea of a conversation where she explains what she is. I want to see his reaction to that. I mean, it may happen off camera and we'll see kind of the after effect of it, because this show is quite good about not having to regurgitate the same information over and over again, but I am kind of interested in his reaction to what she is and how she kind of broke out of it. But so I actually, we joked that there's a lot of comparisons to be made with devs right now. I think it's amazing that this season, despite feeling like a completely new show, thematically, everything that happened in seasons 1 and 2 plays such a backed, sort of foundation for everything that's going on this season, despite the fact that Serac's new, despite the fact that his device is new, all of it works, right? To joke around a little bit here for a second, so one of the quick flashes we get when Caleb gets a quick flash, and it's right after Liam, because Ash shoots Liam because hey, I have a choice. I'm going to prove I have free will by shooting you prick. It's basically what happens. And as he's dying, and Caleb's trying to keep him alive, mainly because he wants to know who he is. Like you said, I didn't know who I was. Like, tell me. He's begging for him to tell him with his dying breath, and he says a couple of vague, cryptic things as he's dying because he can't really get a full sentence out. But the couple of flashes he gets, we see him sort of taking someone and torturing someone. And then we see seemingly that same person that was tied up. It was hard to tell because it was a quick flash with tape in the mouth and stuff, but it felt like the same build. And then we see the same person standing just sort of outside in a coat, and it's Daddy Mars from Veronica Mars, Traveller #1. And I immediately started laughing, not because I saw him, because the second flash, there's a flash of like a woman looking down at him, and she had short dark hair. And I don't think it was the actress from Travelers, but because I was thinking of Travelers, she just immediately popped into my brain when I saw this person, and I went, "Oh, wait a minute! Is there multiple actors from Travelers in his backstory? Because if there is, I'm going to really start drawing some weird fan fiction connections between these two. This is too much.
Yeah. On a side note, go watch Travelers if you haven't already.
Travelers is great.
Also,
yeah,
it's so good. I know that the showrunner's been, and the creator was tweeting a lot about it over the past week or two, just in general, like people asking questions. He's been very, very open about the whole process and everything. So, yeah, some good stuff. But go watch Travelers.
Yeah, 3 seasons on Netflix. It did end before they planned it to, but it actually has a really neat ending point anyway, so it works. It's
one of those rare shows that is a cancellation before its time that I can still recommend fully as no, you can watch this and get a complete journey out of.
Yes. So go watch Travelers. It's about time travelers from the future coming back to save the past before everyone screws it up. This is an alternate timeline where Serac built his device instead. And
I'm all for it.
And that stopped the world from going to shit, but we're still kind of on the brink anyway.
Maybe this is the timeline after the ending.
Yes! This is a Traveller show now, damn it.
I'm all for it.
Oh, I love it. Anyway, so yes, so he dies, and they're leaving together on a plane. Caleb and Dolores, that is, at the end. Someone drops off some stuff for Dolores, though. Doesn't tell him what it is.
Yeah, it's like a big. It's like a fairly big bag. It's like
it looks like it could be some rifles or something like that, or
that was my first thought. But then I thought a lot of rifles, like especially at this, in terms of modern ones, even by now, they tend to break down into smaller pieces than that huge bag.
Could be some golf clubs.
It was about that sort of size, right?
Yeah.
It is kind of what we're getting at here.
Could be some golf clubs. Could be a number of things, but teases for future. And then just to sort of flip back over to Bernard with Connells Dolores, we don't have to really refer to it anymore past this episode because he does sort of go out with a bang, as it were. He actually takes out Palm Clemente and a few of.
She was like not in this season at all, anywhere near as was expected, right?
Yeah, this was like our second or third scene. This was not much at all.
You see her and you go, "Oh, I recognize her. She's going to be a part of the show," and then never mind.
Maybe she's a fan. I don't know. Maybe she's a fan.
I think she could be.
But eventually Stubbs does show up, and they do kind of like 2-on-1. They manage to kind of stop being overpowered by him. But and Bernard interested because he realizes Dolores is clearly factoring into part of his plan. And the most interesting line of dialogue here, though, I mean, I loved Dolores Connells or Connells Dolores like sacrificing himself and all that stuff. I kind of liked his demeanor, as it were, as he was doing all this. It felt very, because a couple of times Bernard says, like, do you ever doubt why she's doing this? Like, do you feel like you're being used? Kind of like he's trying to almost put those questions we were suggesting last week when we were saying, do they develop separately?
He makes a point of saying, that living another life, it bleeds into them slightly, and he's on the right lines, just speaking to the wrong body.
Yeah. So, but he acknowledged. But the most interesting line, though, is when Connell says, "You're the only one we can't replace."
Mm.
And I didn't take that to mean that he can't be. I mean, technically, Dolores was able to build him from memory anyway, so theoretically she could do it again. But I think what he meant by that is like his position in terms of what his function is going to be, because the idea being, okay, she can infiltrate someone else who's close to Liam potentially. Not that that's useful now anyway, but but
she could have had someone else at Delos or whatever. Yeah.
But I think the way Bernard thinks and what his function is and whatever like the overall plan is, because I mean, even though we get a big part of the plan in this episode, obviously there's more of an end game here. We don't know what the end game is exactly, which is worth mentioning. Actually, I didn't even mention we got a proper face off with Dolores and Serac. Where
one of my favorite moments actually is because obviously Serac's the hologram.
Yeah, he's not actually there.
Dolores at the end of the conversation just walks through him. And he looks like horrified that she had the audacity to walk through him like that.
Yeah, which kind of sums up what she's doing anyway.
But just that moment, his reaction, him looking so offended, but like this was the rudest thing you could possibly do.
Yeah, that worked for me. It's very much a battle lines are drawn, and like he's suffered a hell of a blow here, because like the entire world now has the cheat sheet about what that's expected of them, and you know, and they see, you know, there's a little bit of rioting when they leave the train station. We see some people throwing stuff at windows, and you know,
and there are other people just sat on the side of the road, just not knowing what to do with themselves.
Yeah, because the news for a lot of people has been obviously devastating. But that's the beauty of this, though, right? Is that this thing's predicting, was saying 90% that this thing's going to happen, but like, yeah, but how many people defy that 90%? Like, there's a reason why. Like, as much as, you know, you hear about, let's say, young deaths a lot in the world, right? Like, there's a reason why the average life expectancy is still a certain number, you know, in every country. Like, there's still enough people making it to certain ages, for example, to lift the average up to, you know, what, late 70s, you know, in a lot of places.
Yeah, depends on a lot of countries. Reasonable.
Late 70s, sometimes early 80s, depending on how healthy the country is. But, you know, so it's like, yeah, and how many of those people who would survive to that number would have been told if this machine said, you know, there's like a 75% chance that you're going to develop this by the time you're 60, but then, you know, they die at like 85 and this whatever.
Yeah, and it's then, you know, it's all about, you know, that knowledge of, oh well, you've only got a 25% chance of making it. Well, then they don't even bother trying, so they give up on themselves. The only difference in this show so far is that the system has given up on them already.
Yeah, the beauty of life is that we don't know, and therefore we always try. Well, most of us do anyway, and plan. And
some of us, yeah.
Yeah. Well, in theory. So, like, I mean, I guarantee the number would be a lot less if everyone had an expectation of death earlier than they otherwise might have wanted.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he'd be like, well, yeah, I'm good. What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? Yeah.
And that's why, in many ways, you know, Liam Dempsey in this episode is not wrong in that no, you can't tell everyone this.
Yeah.
You can't just let them all know, and he's not entirely wrong there. This is going to, you know, devastate a lot of people. He says, you know, it'll cause, you know, suicides and murders, and yeah, it almost certainly will. Yeah,
but it's irrelevant because they know, and if they know and they're using that to sort of decide who gets things and who doesn't get things, then it doesn't matter. Like, it has to come out to change, because basically the whole point of this is not that all these things will now become true, it's that everyone knowing will completely break the predictions. It will completely break the system.
And that's why this episode makes Dolores less of a villain than ever before. In many ways.
It feels that she's fighting for everyone. Rather than just...
even if she's going about it in maybe the wrong way and just telling everyone, right? Maybe that was the wrong call. Maybe she should have just focused on taking down the system instead and leaving everyone unaware. That would probably be the true heroic route, I would say. But this definitely makes her a lot more on the side of freedom and people, rather than just, you know, being.
This one mirrors her own journey more, of course, and I think. To go a little bit Batman here, like, people need dramatic or examples to break them out of apathy, and I feel like the drama of this is, like, not that I think she's looking for public support necessarily, that most people even know she exists, but I wonder if people having a reason to, like, sort of fight back against the system is going to be important, and therefore they have, you know.
It could be, because for every two people that see, oh, well, you know, I was going to commit suicide in 15 years anyway, might as well just do it now and get it over with, there'll be people who, you know, there'll be someone who says, well, hang on, it says I'm going to commit suicide. Nah, screw that. I'm not doing that. And essentially, that's kind of what she did with Caleb, right? She took him to the pier and was like, hey, 10 years, you're going to commit suicide. And, you know, it's like, well, prove it wrong.
Also, little thing here, but I love that, you know, we were on that pier a few episodes ago, and then we're starting to get to some secrets now, and I love that scene takes place under that pier. We're underneath that very surface. Simple little thing, but...
It is.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, so Bernard and Stubbs go off, and so they're still a team, they're still off together, doing their thing. Obviously, I'm curious to see how, you know, because obviously Maeve's going to be back. We'll see how that happens.
Yeah, I'm expecting one of the next two episodes to be mostly Bernard and Maeve.
I could see that. Good stuff. No, yeah, honestly, I think conceptually everything was clicking for me this episode. I think in terms of just like raw action and drama and what was on the screen, everything was pretty much clicking for me this episode. So no, this is my favorite episode of the season. It's one of the best episodes the show has ever had.
That's fair. I mean, like I think I slightly preferred last week's, and the way it all tied together was just masterful. This is the second best of the season, and I said earlier I thought the genre thing was a bit gimmicky and fun. I didn't mean that in necessarily a negative way, just in that they kind of had fun with it, and it gave them something to do in the action sequences. And I was all into it. It was really enjoyable to watch, and if it made it, it gave it a bit more of a unique flair for just, okay, it's a car chase. Well, now it's not just a car chase, right?
Yeah, but I mean, again, thematically it ties in. Just think about the hosts in the parks and how they'd be like taken from one park and put into a different genre.
Oh yeah.
Caleb's going through all these genres, kind of in the same way that a host might go from Westworld to Shogun World or to
absolutely,
whatever the other one's, War World or whatever. Raj World, yeah. I'm still judging everyone who wanted to go to that world. Let's go back to when imperialism was stupid.
You've just described Brexit in a nutshell. Well done, you.
All right, so that's Westworld episode 5. Very, very, very strong episode. Like I say, I think it's the best season for me so far. And when I look at like the previous seasons, like season 2 was very similar, or not similar. Sorry, that's not the right thing because I've not ended the season yet. But season 2 had like a couple of really standout episodes, right? It was solid, a bit messy in places, but had a couple of really standout episodes. I think this season's been better so far in the sense that everything feels a bit more well defined. It feels focused. It feels like everything's building to one singular goal, which is great. Despite the fact that we have all these separate characters, all the themes are coming together wonderfully. But yeah, so I mean, I would put this episode up there with those like great episodes of season 2. The reason why I'm not really compared to season 1 is because I'd have to go back and rewatch it, because season 1 all blends together in my mind. I feel like all of season 1 just kind of mushes, and not in a bad way. It's a great season, but
no, it is because there's so many timeline jumps, and it's all about this maze of things. It naturally kind of smushes together a bit in your head after it's been like years since I've seen it.
I think season 3's got a chance to beat it though. I genuinely do. I think 5 down, 3 to go. I think there's a fighting chance of it beating season 1.
I think it's very possible. Like I said, so far my only real problem with this season is, like I said, the pacing. How I feel like I was missing something between an intro and then getting to this like second half of stuff. I was just missing the late first act.
I'm reminded of the part of season 2 where it felt like Dolores' plot really was just dragging time for like 3 episodes, because it did everything it needed to do in the first like 2 or 3 episodes, and then obviously just had to do the last couple of episodes. So there was some time in the middle where she was traveling with Teddy on a train and from location to location.
Was she just on a horse with Teddy?
Yeah, and like I remember thinking that some of that was just like, if the choice is between having that or feeling like they've sped a little bit up at the start, I think I prefer this pacing issue than that pacing issue.
I do as well, which is why I think I even said last week that as of right now, point-to-point comparison, season 3 is significantly better than season 2 for me. Not that season 2 is bad, but this is just better. And again, it could,
I think
who knows?
It's funny, we keep comparing to other shows this episode, but I think the mirroring so far of Mr. Robot in terms of season quality is kind of odd. And season 1's this really strong, everyone loves it season. Season 2 has some great high points, but some people think it was bad. People like
some
us,
people thought it was a bit self-indulgent. We ultimately loved it. I think it had some great highs, but yeah, it was a bit more uneven in season 1. That's how we felt about Mr. Robot season 2 and Westworld season 2. And then season 3, we have to wait until we get to the end to know for sure, but season 3 of Mr. Robot was more focused, ended up probably surpassing season 1, and left us, salivating for more. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go on the record and say Mr. Robot's better than Westworld.
Oh, it is. No, Mr. Robot's a better show. I don't.
But in that sense, though, it kind of has me excited for season 4 already for Westworld, right? Because goddamn, Mr. Robot season 4.
Yeah. No, Mr. Robot is the better show, but Westworld's still a fantastic
it's pretty
show.
Great, yeah.
It's one of my favorites right now.
I think it's funny because we did our best of the decade TV shows list a few months ago, and I don't think Westworld quite made it on for either of us, or maybe it was lower down. I don't recall.
Wait,
I'm forgetting now.
Top 25 a decade? Westworld made it on, I'm sure.
Did it? I can't remember. If it did, it was lower down than maybe people expected.
Yeah, it was definitely on there. Yeah, it wasn't like top 10, but it was on there.
Okay, fair enough. But I feel like if we'd had this season had snuck in last year,
sure, yeah,
it probably would have been significantly higher than it was.
There was a lot of competition. There was a lot of good TV in the last 10 years.
Oh, there was, yeah.
A lot of good TV in the last 10 years. But yeah, so that is episode 5. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show, you can do that over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv. You can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. But go and have a look and see if you're interested in any of that and help keep all the content coming. And pretty much that is us. As we said, we're reviewing Devs. There's only one more episode of that left. We've actually been kind of down on it the last couple of episodes, so we'll see if the finale kind of wins us over a little bit.
But it's had some interesting discussion in its problems, if nothing else.
Yeah. I feel like if Alex Garland worked with the Westworld writers...
Devs is frustrating in that I can see it being a show that I think is like 10 out of 10. It's just like fumbles a few things.
Yes, and one of them being the main character, which is...
Yeah, it's a pretty big thing to fumble.
Pretty big fumble, yes. But yes, it's more ethereal than Westworld is. Although Westworld likes to get a little ethereal at times, but it's definitely a bit more action-packed than Devs is, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't get this sort of car chase in Devs.
Oh, not at all. No. So, yeah. But yeah, that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?